The morning my daughter-in-law changed the locks, I was standing on the front porch in my house slippers, holding a paper bag from the grocery store. I had gone out early to pick up buttermilk and a dozen eggs because I wanted to make biscuits for breakfast. I remember thinking about whether I should add a little honey to the dough this time. That's what I was thinking about, honey in the biscuits. I set the bag down on the porch step and tried my key again. Pushed it in, turned it, nothing. Tried once more, slower, in case I was doing something wrong. The lock just sat there, solid and indifferent, like it had never known me at all. My name is Gloria Watkins. I am 64 years old. And that house, the one with the green shutters and the azalea bushes I planted myself along the front walk, was supposed to be my home too. I want to tell you how I got to that porch step. Because it didn't happen overnight. It never does. When my son Nathan and his wife Serena got married 6 years ago, I thought I had gained a daughter. I genuinely believed that. I bought a mother of the bride style dress even though I was the groom's mother, because Serena's own mother had passed when Serena was young and I wanted her to feel like she had someone in that role. I sat beside her at the bridal shower. I helped address envelopes. I was so ready to love her. For the first couple of years, things were fine. Surface level fine, the way things can be when everyone is still performing their best version of themselves. Nathan was working in logistics management over in Columbus, doing well. Serena was in pharmaceutical sales. They had a nice apartment, but it was small, and when they started talking about buying a house and starting a family, I offered to help. I had been saving for a long time. After my husband Gerald passed 8 years ago, I sold our house in Macon and moved into a smaller place in Decatur. I had about $90,000 set aside, the kind of money you don't spend because you know it cost you something to get it. Years of Gerald working overtime, years of me clipping coupons and buying store-brand everything and never once taking a vacation we couldn't drive to. Nathan asked if I would consider contributing to the down payment on a house big enough for all three of us. He said I could have my own suite, my own bathroom, a sitting room. He said it would be good for everyone. He said, "Mom, we want you close." He looked me right in the eyes when he said it. I believed him. I put in $65,000. We bought a house in Westerville, Ohio. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a yard with a big maple tree out back. My name wasn't on the deed. Nathan said it was easier for financing purposes. I didn't push it. He was my son. I trusted him. The first year wasn't bad. I cooked dinner most nights, which I genuinely enjoyed. I kept my space tidy. I tried to be helpful without hovering. When Serena got pregnant with their daughter Lily, I was over the moon. I needed 3 blankets before the baby even arrived, but somewhere around the time Lily turned 1, things started shifting. Serena began making small comments, nothing you could point to directly, nothing you could hold up in your hand and say, "Look at this, look at what she said." It was more like the temperature in a room dropping a few degrees. You don't notice it right away. You just gradually start to feel cold. She started closing the kitchen off when she was cooking. Said she liked her space. I understood that, so I adjusted when I ate breakfast and started making my own meals earlier. Then she mentioned that Lily's nap schedule was being disrupted by noise during certain hours, so I started timing my phone calls and even my television in my room around that. Then she began having her friends over on Saturday afternoons, and Nathan would come find me before they arrived and say, "Mom, would you mind maybe spending the afternoon in your room? Serena just wants it to feel casual, you know how it is." I knew how it was. I went to my room, I read my books, and I listened to them laugh downstairs. I told myself this was normal. Generational living takes adjustment. Everyone said so. I looked it up online. I joined a Facebook group for grandparents living with their adult children. I read the posts and I nodded at the screen. I kept adjusting. But then the adjustments started compounding. I wasn't to use the front entrance when they had guests, only the side door through the garage. I wasn't to answer the door if the doorbell rang. I was asked, politely at first, to not join them for dinner on Friday nights because that was their time. Fine. I started eating alone in my room on Fridays. Then it became Thursdays too. Then I noticed I was eating alone most nights, not because they had told me to, but because Serena had started making pointed comments about portion sizes and grocery bills, and it was easier to just fix myself a sandwich and stay out of the way. Nathan said nothing. Not once. I want to make sure I say that clearly, because when I look back on all of it, I think about Serena. And I feel anger, yes. But when I think about my son who I drove to every baseball practice and every school play, and who I sat up with when he had pneumonia at 16, and who I helped move 3 times in his 20s, when I think about Nathan standing in that kitchen watching his wife speak to me the way she spoke to me and saying nothing, I feel something that is much harder to name than anger. I talked to my friend Claudette about it. Claudette has known me for 30 years, since our kids were in elementary school together, and she does not soften things for me. She listened to everything I told her over the phone one afternoon while I was sitting in my car in the Kroger parking lot because I didn't want to be overheard in my own room, and when I finished she said, "Gloria, you need to start making a plan." I told her I was hoping things would get better. She said, "Plans and hope are not the same thing." I started quietly looking at apartments in the area. 1-bedroom units near the bus line, since I'd given up driving long distances after a minor accident 2 years earlier. The rents were anywhere from $1,100 to $1,500 a month. I had about $22,000 left in savings after my contribution to the house. It felt manageable, barely, if I was careful. But then in February, 3 months before everything came apart, something happened that I hadn't told anyone about yet. My late husband, Gerald, had a brother, Ray, who we had been estranged from for many years over an old family dispute. Ray had moved out west decades ago, made something of himself in commercial real estate out in Phoenix, and we had not spoken in over 15 years. I hadn't even thought of Ray in a long time. In February, I received a certified letter from a law office in Scottsdale, Arizona. Ray had died the previous November. He had never married, had no children. In his will, he had left his estate to be divided among his surviving family members, which at this point meant Gerald's side. Gerald was gone. Nathan was Gerald's child, which made him an heir. But there was also a specific bequest, a separate line in the will, left directly to me. Gerald's wife. Ray had apparently kept track of us over the years in ways I hadn't known about. The bequest to me specifically was $1.8 million. I read that letter 4 times. Then I sat down on the edge of my bed because my legs had gone strange on me. I called no one for 2 days. I just sat with it. I went through my normal routines, ate my sandwich, watched my programs, came and went through the side garage door. I helped Lily put together a puzzle on the living room floor on a Tuesday afternoon when Serena was at work and Nathan was traveling. Lily pressed the piece into the wrong spot and looked up at me to see if I'd noticed. I pretended I hadn't. She grinned. I called Claudette on day 3. She listened. When I finished, she said, "You call an attorney before you tell a single other soul." I did exactly that. The attorney's name was Gerald Webb, which felt like some kind of sign, though I'm not a superstitious woman. He had an office in downtown Columbus, and I took a lift there without mentioning it to anyone. He reviewed the letter, confirmed it was legitimate, and began the paperwork to process the inheritance. He told me it would take 60 to 90 days to fully clear probate and transfer the funds. He also told me, gently but directly, that before I made any decisions about housing or family or anything else, I should let the money arrive first. I went home. I kept quiet. I kept making my sandwiches and watching my programs. 2 weeks later, Serena asked me to come downstairs. She was standing in the living room with her arms crossed and an expression on her face I had seen once before when she'd had to return a dress to Nordstrom that she'd already worn. Nathan was sitting in the armchair near the window. He didn't stand up. She told me that they had been discussing things, that the arrangement wasn't working for their family, that they needed their space back. She used the word boundary several times. She said they were giving me 30 days to make other arrangements. I looked at Nathan. He was studying the carpet. I said, "Nathan, do you have anything you want to say to me?" He said, "Mom, I think this is for the best." I said, "You put me in the guest room of a house I helped pay for, and now you're asking me to leave." Serena said that my contribution had been a gift. Serena said that my contribution had been a gift, that it had never come with any conditions, and that perhaps I should have gotten that in writing if I'd expected something different. I stood there for a moment, looking at the two of them. Then I said I understood, and I went upstairs to my room. I called Claudette that night, and I cried. Not the ugly panic kind of crying, but the slow, quiet kind, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and old. She stayed on the phone with me until midnight. She said, "You already have a plan, Gloria. You just have to hold on." I started packing my things slowly over the next 2 weeks without making it obvious. I boxed up Gerald's photo albums, my grandmother's quilts, my good dishes. I arranged for a storage unit near Claudette's neighborhood in Decatur. And then, 12 days before my 30 days were up, I came home from a morning walk to find my key didn't work. I stood on that porch step with my grocery bag, buttermilk, eggs. I thought about the honey for the biscuits. I knocked on the door. Serena opened it with her phone in her hand. She looked at me as if I had knocked on a stranger's door. She said the timeline had moved up, that she'd had the locks changed that morning, and that my remaining boxes were in the garage. She said Nathan had meant to call me but had been busy with work. She handed me a garage door opener and told me someone would help me load the boxes into my car. I said, "I don't have my car here, Serena." She looked at me for a moment. Then she said, "I'm sure you can arrange something," and she closed the door. I stood on that porch for a long time. The azalea bushes were just starting to come up. I had planted those 3 years ago. I had dug the holes myself. I called Claudette. She was in my driveway, her driveway in Decatur, within 2 hours. We got my boxes out of the garage. A neighbor from down the street, a kind man named Douglas, who had chatted with me over the fence a dozen times, saw us loading the car and came over without being asked. He helped us fit everything in without a word of explanation needed. I stayed with Claudette for the next 3 weeks while the probate finished clearing. I did not call Nathan. He called me once, about 10 days after the lock incident. He said he hoped I was okay, that he was sorry about the timing, that things had been stressful. I listened to the whole thing. Then I said, "Nathan, I want you to know that I love you, and I want you to know that what happened is something I won't be forgetting." And then I said goodbye and I hung up. When the money cleared, it came as a wire transfer into an account Gerald Webb had helped me set up, $1.8 million. I sat in Claudette's kitchen and I looked at my phone and I felt something I can only describe as the ground becoming solid again under my feet. I bought a house, a smaller one than I needed, honestly, because big houses are just more to clean, and I've always known that. It's a 2-bedroom Craftsman in a neighborhood in Smyrna, Georgia, close to where my sister lives, close to the church I grew up attending. It has a front porch with room for 2 rocking chairs. I planted azaleas along the walk. I set up a modest fund for Claudette's granddaughter's college tuition because Claudette has never once in 30 years let me face anything alone, and some things you can actually repay if you're fortunate enough. Douglas, the neighbor who helped carry my boxes without asking a single question, I sent a proper thank you note and a gift card to the hardware store he was always mentioning. It felt small, but I meant it fully. I did not give anything to Nathan and Serena. I know some people will have opinions about that. I've heard the arguments. She's your blood, he's your son. You only get one family. People make mistakes. I have turned all of those arguments over in my mind many times, and what I keep coming back to is this. The morning my key didn't work, Nathan had not yet called me. not to warn me, not to apologize in advance, not to say, Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't know she was doing it today. He found out and he didn't call. He was busy with work. I am not a hard woman. I don't think of myself that way. But there are certain moments in your life where someone shows you exactly who they are and exactly how much you matter to them, and I believe you owe it to yourself to believe them. I have a porch now. I have 2 rocking chairs, and in the evenings when it's warm, I sit in one of them and I let the other one be empty, and I drink my coffee, and I watch the end of the light move across my yard. My yard. My front walk with my azaleas. Lily is 2.5 now. I think about her sometimes, and I hope she grows up to be the kind of woman who would help someone carry boxes without being asked. I hope she turns out better than the house she's growing up in. Children usually have that chance. Nathan will call again someday. I expect he will call when the money is no longer a secret, when Serena finds out somehow, which she will, because people always do. And I've already decided what I'll say. I'll answer. I'll let him talk. And then I'll tell him that I hope he's well, that I hope Lily is healthy, that I hold no hatred in my heart for anyone. And that will be true. What I also won't be doing is writing any checks. I tell this story not because I want sympathy, though I understand that's what some of you will feel, and I don't mind it. I tell it because I spent too many years of my life making myself smaller so that other people could feel more comfortable, taking up less space, eating alone, coming through the side door, and I want every woman listening to this who is doing the same thing to hear me say, you are allowed to stop. You don't need a windfall to stop. You don't need anyone's permission. You just need to decide that you matter. But I won't lie to you. The money helped. If your own family has ever made you feel like a guest in your own life, if you've ever sat in a parking lot making phone calls because you didn't feel welcome in your own room, I want to know. Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if you believe the way I've come to believe that sometimes God lets things fall apart in exactly the right order, I'd love to hear that too. I've had a lot of time to sit with everything that happened. And I mean really sit with it, not just replay it when I can't sleep, but actually turn it over slowly the way you turn over a rock to see what's living underneath it. What I keep coming back to is this: nothing Serena did to me appeared out of nowhere. And nothing that came to me afterward appeared out of nowhere either. There's a kind of logic to life that most of us resist naming because it sounds too neat, too convenient. But I've lived long enough now to believe it's real. The way you treat people accumulates. It builds into something. And eventually, whatever you've been building catches up to you, one way or another. Serena spent 3 years making me smaller. Not in one dramatic moment, but in 100 quiet ones. The side door. The Friday dinners. The comments about grocery bills. Each one of those moments was a choice she made about what kind of person she wanted to be, about what she believed I was worth. She didn't know she was also building the record of herself. People rarely do. Nathan made his choices too. Silence is still a choice. Standing in that armchair studying the carpet while his mother stood there holding her dignity with both hands. That was a decision. It had weight. It had consequence. And I made choices too. I want to be honest about that because I think that's where the real lesson lives for me. I chose to stay quiet for too long. I chose to keep adjusting, keep shrinking, keep telling myself that patience was the same as wisdom. It isn't always. Sometimes patience is just fear wearing a more respectable name. I was afraid of losing my son. I was afraid of causing conflict. I was afraid that if I pushed back, I would be the difficult one, the one who couldn't make it work. So I ate my sandwiches alone and I kinked through the garage and I told myself it was fine. It was not fine, and I think somewhere underneath all of it I knew that. Claudette knew it. She told me to make a plan before I was ready to hear it, because real friends do that. They say the thing you're not ready for, and then they wait. What I want to say to anyone listening who recognizes any piece of this story is that your dignity is not a bargaining chip. You don't trade it for peace in the house. You don't lease it out to keep a relationship from getting uncomfortable. The moment you start coming through the side door in your own home, you have already lost something that no amount of patience is going to recover. The only way back is to stop, to decide, to make a plan like Claudette said, even before you think you're ready. I didn't need the inheritance to do that. I want to be clear about that, even though I understand why people might think otherwise. The money made it easier, yes, but the decision to stop accepting less than I was worth, that happened in a parking lot on a Tuesday afternoon, long before any certified letter arrived from Arizona. It happened when I called Claudette and heard myself describing my own life and barely recognized it. Gloria Watkins deserved better than a side door, so do you.